Okay, let's get moving. Hey guys, thank you very much for everyone to be here, especially to our speakers, of course, to give their time to actually to be here and basically show us all the stuff they are been working on and stuff like that. So a big thank you. So I'm just going to show you guys just a couple of slides just to give you some context of the team and how everything works. So very quickly, the agenda. So we will have just a quick presentation from my side, 5 minutes top. Then we will start with Yianni in terms of his intro to the qdt components. Then we will skip to Christof. And of course, the idea is to have some kind of interaction in terms of you guys can start posting your questions in the chat channel, and then of course we will have some time at the end so you can interact with the speakers asking the questions and stuff like that. One of the things also, we are recording this session and we will later on publish this recording in our YouTube channel. So it's going to be available as well for you to see in a different day. And before we start, just to share the Qlik Integration team. So in this case, I just want to give a big thank you to Richard, Ryan, and Piers for all their help to make this possible. So a big thank you. Next, just to give a small reference. So besides the meetups, we are also doing something that is almost like small interviews with some people that we invite or some people that would like to share something with the community. So last week, we actually had an amazing conversation with Thomas and Andres from Cluster, and they basically show us how they actually use the content library in Qlik Sense to leverage their mashups. It's going to be actually published in our YouTube channel very soon. It's actually an amazing presentation and in the way they present and how we can leverage the content library. I actually invite you all to go and see the work these guys are doing, and of course how you guys also can use the content library. So I will shut up now. So, but before again, sorry about here in terms of the presentation here. Before I finish, again, just a big thank you to Yianni and Christof to give their time to be here today. And also, before we start the presentation, guys, if you have something that you would like to share with the community, something that you guys like, you guys enjoy, that you guys find out, just come to us, reach out, and we will basically be very happy to have a session with you guys to pass that information to the community. So again, thank you very much for all your time. And let's start with Yiannis. So let me just give you the presenters.
Share my screen.
Can you share it already?
Yeah, share my screen.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
All yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Actually, this is my first time, and I didn't know what to expect. It sounds very interesting, very promising, and I would love to be more involved into more of the meetups. Not as a guest, not as a speaker, as a guest too, because there are a lot of interesting things that are happening with Qlik Sense world in general, like the SaaS environment and everything that Christof is going to cover. Nice stuff. What I will be talking about today is the qdt components. Just a brief introduction. I'll try and cover as much as possible, but I don't want to make it because we have a lot of components there. We have done a lot of work for the past 3 years. Qdt components, it stands for Qlik Demo Team. We're part of Qlik, and we just part of the marketing group, and we demo apps and whatever the marketing wants to showcase our product in general, all of our products. So 3 years ago, I was working on Angular, Francis was working with React, and other people were working with different frameworks. So the idea was to create something that is going to work on every single framework with the capability API and the engine API. So people can do mashups without having to worry about the framework, if the CSS is loaded, if the required JS loads, what library to load, what not. The Qdt component started with the idea of making very easy to start with just a config file and the ID if you want to just do the visualization API. And then from there on, we started added things like maps, 3D maps, and stuff like that. And we've done a lot of work with Picasso.js. And at the end, I'm going to show our latest work with Fortune, which is amazing. So that being said, React, this Qdt component library is built with React. So React is handling the rendering of the DOM and all the updates, like the animations of the bar charts, if you make a selections and all this stuff. So it's I'm going to show you later on how it works. So the second question is why Qdt components? As I said, it's easy of the use. You can use it with just a config file and a few lines of code, and then you can be very extensive. And if you know how to build a hypercube, then you can pass a hypercube def and create your own charts. It can connect with the engine API and the capability API, and the good thing is that you can have connected sessions. So you can pass an ID, the identity, and the WebSockets. There are going to be two WebSockets open, but they will be all connected. So if you make selections into the capability API object, it will be showing in your engine API object. It has pre-built charts with Picasso.js, and you can extend that, and you can because we split up Picasso components like boxes, lines, points, and you can take those and create your own, if you want, later on combo boxes. It works, as I said, in multiple platforms, Angular, React, Vue. I have several examples and templates that you can start with. And it works on, I think, all of our products. If you have been tested extensively with Qlik Core, Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows, on Kubernetes, and the past week with Qlik Cloud Services. So, and I'm going to show that at the end, and Christof is going to elaborate more on how to do the integration. There are many components. They're ready to plug and play. You can start passing just the hypercube or the measure or the dimension, and you can start creating your mashup on the fly. It's open source. You can add, fork, and customize it to fit your needs. A lot of people have done that, and they ask me on how to. So you can customize the library to even the alert, the pop-up box. When the WebSocket connection is finished, like after 30 seconds, based on how you set it up in your virtual proxy, you can customize the text and say something else. We've done this with the Fortune mashup that I'll show at the end. So enough said. That's all theory. Let's move into the actual presentation of the components. And I put together the past 2 days in the observable. Most of the components that we have so far. But because we've been working with Qdt components 2.5, and we're in a major work of we reworked everything, and we're in beta of the 3.0, and 3.0 is faster, and it's less code to write. So here's an example of a simple, very simple connection to the Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows. It uses the capability API and the visualization API. So all you have to do is load the library, pass a config on how to connect to your Qlik Sense Enterprise, like your host, if it's over HTTPS, and your virtual proxy prefix. This is very important, otherwise it will break if you don't need slashes. So if your anonymous proxy is JWT, you just put JWT here. You don't need /JWT or anything else. And the app ID. So I have the help desk right now because it's pretty easy and it comes free with every Qlik Sense Enterprise installation. So you can play with your own servers. And then I'm doing the this is a promise. So we wait to resolve, and then you start pulling the components from qdt-components. And this the visualization API will only have one, which is the qdt-viz, and it takes these parameters like the ID, if you want height, width, and the other options that are I don't know if I have them here. Yes. So you can go here and see the other options. So you can pass, like, if you want to be interactive, means people make selections or not. We'll see tooltips, and then you have the object. So this is a very, very simple, straightforward mashup with qdt-components and Qlik Sense Enterprise. Now, we have another one, which is you can have as many connected apps as you want. Let me clear the selections. I think. Keeping the same WebSocket connection. Okay, I'm going to clear them. In the next ones, I have the selection toolbar, which we can play with the selections a little bit more. So these two objects are from one app, and the other two are from another app. So you can pass as many apps you want from here. Here's the config for each of the app. You can resolve the promise, and then you can have the viz again based on which element to show it, the app, and the different IDs. Moving on, we have you can create your own table. Now, this is all with Capability API. You can create any visualization in your Qlik Sense, and then use the Capability API to build your mashup. That's what most of the people are doing it as of today. The problem with that is it's slow because it takes time to load all the libraries, required.js, Qlik.js, the CSS, Angular 1.7.15, I think it is now, and do all the interactions. What we're trying to do is move to the engine API, which is way, way faster, and you don't have all these libraries. So you can do the simple engine API calls and get the data, and from there you can use the components like the table. QDT table is one component. You do the same principle of connecting to the Qlik Sense Enterprise, and then use with Enigma.js, of course. So the config is the same. You use the QDT Enigma to make the connection. You resolve the promise. And then from here, you specify the component, which at this point is QDT table, and you pass the entire hypercube, like dimensions, expression set analysis, whatever you want to have here. And this is the chart. It's a way, way faster. Another example, So you feel free to stop me if you have any questions or if you want something to be explained a little bit farther, let me know, please. So the next one that I have that is very popular too is the filters and the drop down. So we have the drop down similar to Qlik Sense. Well, now there's a little bit of issues with Hypercube, with the style sheets. Yeah, but anyway. So you can make selections. Oh, it was working this morning. Maybe I need a new website. Let me open incognito. Yep, that works. Something with the website. Okay, so you can have the filter. This is a QDT filter. You can make selections similar to Qlik Sense. This is all engine API. So there's no capability API, nothing of that sense. And this is the drop down with all of your selections. You can clear them. And the same principle applies here. You connect with QDT Enigma. And then for the selection toolbar, it's always the same. There's nothing else. We always use Qdt Compose to handle the simple elements. So Qdt selections is just a component, Qdt selections with this property. This is always standard, doesn't change. And then you have the filter where you create it with the Qdt select code. And then you pass the dimension. It's always a list object. So it has to get a list object def. Of course, more details on how to create hypercubes and list object definition files, JSON objects. Well, I don't have them here. I haven't finished all the reference, but I'm going to put a reference there to be able to read more on how to create list objects. So this is another one. Okay. The other one is the map. We were able to use for one of our clients to create a map with data from Qlik Sense and put little dots all over the place based on latitude and longitude. So this is a simple mapbox. So the component is called QDT Mapbox. You can have all the options that you can get from Mapbox. They're all here. If you go to their API, you pass anything if you want it to be interactive or not and stuff like that. And then we have a little callback to handle more. And I'll show you what I mean more with the next one. So here I have just a fly to, just a little animation when we get in. But you can add more. And the next one that I've added today was with 3D bars. So I incorporated 3JS library, and you can have a lot of 3D objects with animations on the map. This is a little bit more advanced. We can cover that at maybe another time. I don't know, but it has a lot of code here. And as I said, you can take all of these, fork them, connect them to your Qlik Sense servers, and create your own, connect them to your apps, and play around with the hypercubes. See how it works. That's the beautiful, the beauty of observable. We created another component. It's called the sequencer. The sequencer, what it does, it's a list object. It takes a list of dimensions up to 10,000, which is the limit of cells per page. So, and it moves one by one, making selections, and then you, based on the delay, like how many seconds you want it to be looping. And so the idea was to have like a time frame. We use that in Fortune. I'll show you how to, with that makes selections and move stuff in time. And you see the selections here too. Clear, done. It's called QDT sequencer, and you pass these options: delay in seconds, how many seconds. If you want to use a wheel to move back and forth, and if you want to, because one of our clients didn't want to have any buttons anywhere. They want to use the keypad. So we have the arrow. So you can do that, and then you can pass again the list object def with the dimension of date. And this is the table again. So moving to the most interesting stuff. Oh, we have the KPIs too. So simple KPIs, because they're very popular. It's a simple QDT KPI component. You just pass the hypercube def with the measure, just one measure, and it gives you the KPI. And then you can customize it with colors. Here, you can put any color that you want, padding, whatever you want to pass. It's up to you. Or if you don't want it, you just want the value. There were a lot of times people just wanted the Q num. You can get that without any CSS. And now moving to the cool stuff, which is not everything else was not cool, but this is also very cool because it's Picasso.js. It's our library, and it's way better, faster, 3D, D3. So it's called QDT Picasso, and now we have created hooks. We have about 3 or 4 hooks up to now. We will expand them, of course. But the one is use bar chart settings, so you can create your bar chart by using that hook and saying, okay, I want it horizontal. And then, of course, this is a simple one where you pass the hypercube again with one dimension and one measure to get this. And this window, make selections. The animation here is not as smooth as it would be on a regular page because it's observable and it has a lot of other stuff running on the background, but it works and it's really nice. So based on that, you can create any Picasso chart that is out there. Going to Picasso.js website, and you will find a lot of setting files there. If you don't, if you're not satisfied with what we have, but if you have if you want something, another like a Gantt chart, we have a Gantt chart, but it's not there yet. Pyramid, we have that, but it's not there yet. Merimeko, it's getting there. Hopefully, I'm going to have it by tomorrow. But if you have any other chart that you would like to see, just let us know. This is a simple line chart. The same idea there again with QDT Picasso as component. This time is the use line chart settings hook. And you'll see later on how you can pass your own properties or your own settings, and you can customize it even more. And you can make, of course, selections. How am I on time? Do I have time?
You still have time, definitely. Actually, let's just actually put just 2 questions actually that we have here.
Okay. Yes.
Can we actually use these QDT components with Qlik Core?
Yes.
And then this, yeah. Okay, cool. So we can use it.
Well, I've done it with the bike.qlik.com that we did 2 years ago. And last year, I don't know if you remember the bracket challenge where we gave 100,000. Yeah, we did everything within Kubernetes with Qlik Core We use the Qlik core scaling repo back then, and of course customize it a lot, and qdt components to connect and get all the data. But yes, you have the ability of connecting to Qlik core, Qlik cloud services, Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows, and Qlik Sense Enterprise for Kubernetes.
Okay. The second question is, how different it is this from the Nebula.js? What are the main differences?
Yes, Nebula.js is fairly new. I think it came this year into the Qlik world, and it's very beautiful. I played with it; it's real nice. The principle is the same. We use Engine API and Enigma.js to make the calls, and Picasso.js to do the charts. Nebula doesn't have the capability API though. So if you were thinking of doing a mashup with objects that you have already created in your Qlik Sense environment, and you want just to embed them, you cannot do that with Nebula. You have to use the capability API. And that's one, that's the major one. The second one, Nebula doesn't have, I think, I'm not quite sure, but Miralem can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it has all of the Picasso charts yet as solutions. But they're planning on releasing them very soon. So, but that's whatever you want to use. It's the same idea. Also, Nebula has the CLI, which we don't have it yet. I'm planning on doing a CLI very soon that will make that you will be able to create from a CLI a React template, a Vue template, or an Angular 9 template. So, I think these are the main differences.
Okay. Just one last one that just popped up here now. Any plans for something around the handling authentication?
No, that's the thing. Yes, we had a lot of people asking us about this, and the library is meant for the front end, to put on a browser as part of a Webpack package or by just a simple HTML page, and we should not be handling authentication. Why? Because during authentication, you're doing a lot of either you having a JWT public and server tokens, and you don't want to expose those. You can handle the authentication with the server, like Node.js we have done in the past, and pass the cookie into the mashup, or get the ID and use it on the connection. So we're not planning on doing authentication with Qlik Sense, with qdt-components. I'm sorry, it's totally different because we mainly want to use it on the front end as a mashup. What we can do is, and I started working on it, but I just didn't have time. We can have like a pre-qdt-components build that you can do the authentication with either JWT, which is very popular and I love it, or any other method like certs on your server, and then move to qdt-components and do the mashup.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So, okay, if I have more time, I can.
You still have time. You still have time. So yeah, feel free to just show the stuff.
Unless Christof wants to, has a lot of stuff and he wants, I'm fine. So whatever, it's all good. So yeah,
you definitely have more of the visual parts to show. So go ahead.
Okay, cool. So here's a combo chart that I did. It's a combination of. And here comes the more interesting part: is where you can start. If you know that you can do very well big hypercubes, you master hypercubes and you master Picasso.js settings files, then you can start doing a lot more stuff. So what we've done is we make little components of QDT Picasso settings. So you can have the box, the point, the line. So you can get one basic one. So you can start with where's the main chart here? Yes, you can start with the hook of the use bar chart settings, which has the axis, it has the grid behind it, it has the interaction of the brushing and the tooltip. So you can start with that, and it has the box. Also, it has the bar chart. So you can start with that, and then you can add into it. So we can. What I've done here is use the main bar chart settings file, and added another hypercube. So I've expanded the scale to include the first measure and the second measure. And then I said, I'm going to create another line now on top of it. I'm going to name it, it has a name, which is the keys line. So it's fine. You don't have to define it here. But you can say, okay, the Y will be, the field will be measure 1. This is the stroke that I'm passing. And you can see all these settings on how to manipulate the Picasso settings files and the Picasso.js website. So, and then I'm also creating a point, because Qt Picasso components has a lot of, as I said, it has a line, it has a point, it has a slice, it has a lot of individual components. So you can get a point and color it, say it's measure 1, and then at the end you can pass it here as a Qt Picasso with these settings. And of course, you have to define the hypercube with the measures. And here it is with the tooltip, all the interactions. This is the second custom line that I passed. Unfortunately, with you have to have a point too, because with a line, because it's a continuous line, you don't have, we cannot control which element that is on the hypercube. So we have to have the point to enable the tooltip and the selections. So you got to have a line, and then you got to have a point to make the interactions work. So this is a little bit more advanced. Then we have the scatter plot, which is like the use bar chart settings. It's its own hook, so you can start with the scatter plot settings, and then you can customize it later. So this is the scatter plot. You can make selections, tooltips, as usual. Move up on the legend. You can make selections on the legend. And here's the, now moving to a little bit more customizing. And I went a little bit farther. So if you like to have your own images, little icons, little GIFs, whatever you want to use, you can use the same scatter plot setting, but you can pass a little bit of the settings. You can pass some options of the image you want to use, width and height. You can make selections like the regular scatter plot. As I said, everything is in beta, so it's still a work in progress. There are a lot of bugs, I'm pretty sure. So we're working on them.
Don't say that part. Don't say that part. Everything works fine.
Thank you.
What would you say in terms of just a question? What are the main advantages and disadvantages of using the QDT components, or actually embedding the object directly from the Qlik Sense Enterprise?
Yeah, they're totally different. The capability API, it's faster for you, lesser code to write, but it's slower to make the connection, to draw the object onto the DOM, because it has to inject into the DOM CSS, JS libraries, AngularJS, and it has to bundle all the interactions together. So there's a delay of about a second, I don't know, depending on your connectivity, on your Qlik Sense server, RAM, CPUs, all this nice technical stuff. So Engine API is always faster, but the drawback of this is you have to maintain it. You have to be careful of what you do there. Is like the components, the interactions. You have to handle that. Of course, qdt-components has a start with making selections, range selections, tooltips. You can customize it, but it's not. It's very close to what Qlik Sense environment with the capabilities, but it's not Qlik Sense Enterprise. You know, so there's a difference, and you decide what you want to. Because a lot of people, most of the people that come to me, they're people that they're not developers, they're not Qlik savvy, they don't know a lot of stuff. They just they were able to make a visualization in Qlik Sense, and they just want to take that and make a web page because their CEO told them to make a dashboard based on that and show it to somebody else. So if you want to just do that, because up to now people are using iframes, and I told them no, iframes is like, but that's all they know. So you can use this library and get the objects very easily and create a mashup on the fly in less than 5 minutes. So you understand the difference, right?
Yeah. Of course. So it's all about almost like what kind of investment do you want to put in terms of effort, or if you are willing to, let's say, to let the performance go a little bit lower in terms of, because you are bringing the whole object, but you don't need to code a lot or create the object from scratch, something like that. Okay.
I also found out that when I created the WordPress plugin a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I think 2-3 years ago, they had issues with the required JS when it was injecting libraries on the order of the libraries. So they had problems doing mashups in WordPress. So for the people that have those issues, then the engine API is way better. But you know, of course, it has the drawbacks. It depends on what you want to do, and yeah.
Okay, cool. So last 5 minutes, do you have anything else to show? Is there any other questions that you guys might want to put forward?
I have the QCS. I'm going to show it. Christof is going to elaborate a lot more. I'm just going to show a little bit on my local environment, because you have to be authenticated in order to use. So regarding Qlik Cloud Services, you can do the same config with qdt-components. The only difference is that you pass the web and integration ID over here, and that's it. And then you open it. Let me see. I'm disconnected. No, too many. Yeah. Oh, it's. I thought I had that. Anyway, but that's, yeah, it was working in the morning. Maybe I have it.
This is the fun part of live presentation, right?
No. Yeah, I don't want to get in too much into QCS. The only thing we pass is the web integration ID, which you get from here. You just make sure you get the ID when you create a new ID under web, integration web, and you make sure you whitelist your origin, and that's it. But I want to.
It's like the concept that we create client ID and secret ID to integrate with APIs. Yeah.
It's all course. We make sure that Kubernetes is safe and secure for everyone, so we don't have any issues. So here's this. Yeah, I want to close my presentation with our latest example with Fortune. It's a project that we worked the entire team of Qlik demo team and Fortune. A lot of people got involved with this, and it was a very successful project. So it's all done with Qlik Sense Enterprise, qdt-components, and the Enigma.js and Picasso.js, of course. And everything is done with scroll. So as you scroll, Picasso.js, we do update the component, and we keep on updating the Picasso.js charts here, the line area chart. and everything is working smoothly and nicely. Oh, here's the sequencer. So here's the sequencer moving through the elements. It's all Picasso and the engine API. Stack bar charts. There's the map. Interactivity, custom tooltips that you can pass custom tooltips here. And that's it. I think I'm done. Thank you, everybody.
No.
Thank you for your time. I hope I was not very boring.
No, really cool. It was really cool, the presentation. Before I let you go and we move to Christof, we have one more question from Piers. Piers, do you want to ask your question?
I've seen a few customers have.
We lost you. Can you? We are losing you. Can you speak louder?
Yep. Let me know. I've got a dodgy internet connection. I've seen a few Qlik customers have different versions of Qlik Sense in development and production. Are there any risks in using the latest qdt components in different versions?
No, it's the same engine API Enigma.js library that we're using with 2. We were using with 2.5. It has nothing has changed in the background. The problem that you may see is between versions, like right now that we've upgraded it to June release. I've seen the pop-up because we have when the website closes, there's a timeout pop-up from qdt-components with a custom text saying that you have been timed out and all this stuff. But now it's different, so I have to investigate on that. And also, if you were using before Qlik Sense 3.2, that was a major difference. There were a lot of problems before 3.2, but above 3.2, all the latest couple of years, you should not have any issues at all, none.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Yianni, thank you very much. It was really, really cool and really interesting. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, definitely.
Thank you for that was great.
Thank you very much. And in this case, Christof, the stage is all yours, and thank you very much for coming as well.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Yiannis, I hope I answered one of the questions in the chat correctly. Where the question was, are all components based on the engine API? And I thought you have the choice also to embed some which are based on the capability API, which was what you started first, and then the later examples were all based on engine API. But please correct if this is wrong statement, so I don't want to spoil wrong information here.
What was the statement again? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Are all of your examples based on engine API?
Yes, we only have 2 examples of the capability API. Can you hear me? Am I? Yeah. I only have 2 examples of the capability API, and most of them are with the engine API because there are not a lot of stuff that we can do with the capability API. You just get the ID, you speed up the visualization on the mashup, and that's it. We don't have any control over it, none. So we're done with this. Everything else is with the engine API because we're trying to move away from the capability API and build more stuff. But yes, most of our examples are from the engine API. Correct.
Good. All right. So I'm about to speak about the integration with Qlik Sense Cloud Editions in particular. So some of the stuff, or Yiannis showed already a little bit towards the direction. And for those who don't know me, I'm working as a solution architect in Qlik pre-sales. I've been with Qlik for almost 8 years now. So it's with 1 year break where I was at Accenture. And I've been all the time working with Qlik View earlier and later Qlik Sense, most of the time Qlik Sense now. My agenda for today, and I don't feel I will fill a whole 40 minutes or something, so I'll probably be a little bit shorter, but that gives more room for Q&A. So let's quickly have a look what the difference is between web apps and the mashup, and then create a simple, and when I say simple, it's really think of not much and then take away a lot. That's what we'll be doing together. So it's like the simplest possible mashup with Qlik Sense Cloud Edition. And then let's take a bit more serious and see what Qlik has shared on the GitHub on its open source library. And then I also want to re-emphasize, I guess you had it in the last meetup already as an announcement, Qlik.dev, which is online since a couple of days, and I think it's a very big step forward. And yeah, with that, let's start with a simple definition that Qlik has on actually the help page, and it's consistent also on the open source, that a mashup is what Yiannis doesn't do a lot after that following this documentation, because it's the one that actually gets the JavaScript and CSS from Qlik Sense, from the same one that Qlik Sense also has in its own client, and uses the capability APIs. So the advantage is surely that you have only a few lines of code to get fully functional and rich interactive visualizations and other elements like selection bars, search, and everything. But on the other hand, you heard it before, you have to eat the big elephant called the Qlik.js, and like it or not. So even if you're planning to do only small stuff like a few charts with not so much functionality. So that takes me to web apps, and this is where you're talking to the backend, and I'm not talking about the backend API, which is also a name. If you Google for it or look up the help, this is also an API based on JavaScript. I'm not talking about this one because I would say most of the web apps since Enigma was launched, I think 4 years back, are based on Enigma, and they should be, because that's really the best wrapper to the Qlik Sense engine available. Right. Yeah, there are many APIs with certain names. I once made the joke that I believe if Qlik codes 3 more endpoints, they tend to give them a new API and give them a new name. But theoretically, the big difference is only between the capability API and Enigma, and that's also the backend API. So what's the difference now when we come to what we know? Qlik Sense for Windows, you had the option before to run a mashup and actually also a web app if you wanted to on Qlik Sense itself. I'm sure you've seen this before, so there is even a built-in code editor where you can start from a in my own opinion, not so good boilerplate code with a mashup. And this creates like a first impression that the Qlik Sense can be the host for your website. And it can be, and I'm open to discussion of how many of you have done this before. But usually what I see in reality is that people use their own web server and they embed Qlik Sense from another server. So you have not Qlik Sense to be the host of the whole thing of your website. But at least you had the option, and it's a nice vehicle in pre-sales to get a quick show of things, right? With Qlik Sense Cloud Editions, this option is gone. So you can't upload your website onto Qlik Sense Cloud. So if you're in the console there, you can upload an extension, but not a mashup, and that's on purpose. So the whole thing is you have to run your website somewhere else, and it forces you to do it right first time. So because if you're running a website, you have to make a lot of decisions. You have to be it security, be it user handling, all those stuff. So this is nothing that belongs into Qlik Sense. If you're integrating, that's up to you where to run it. And then, of course, the big thing is CORS. And I'm not talking about the little French island where I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks. I'm talking of the cross-origin resource sharing thing that if you don't do it right, you will for sure meet it, because this is when the browser stops and intercepts certain code being loaded from another website and trying to be executed on the first. And that's the whole thing that we are doing here in Qlik Sense Cloud Edition, is to whitelist code to make it accessible. And that's what we're going to do now live. You have to have a tenant on Qlik Cloud, or if you from previous months, maybe you've set up your own Qlik Sense on Kubernetes. It's exactly the same version. You also have a console there, and you also have the web integration. And you need to note down this web ID, web integration ID, and whitelist the URL from which you plan to later host it. And it's just the host name with no slash and nothing afterwards, just the host name with the port and the protocol. And yeah, then let's create, upload an app, and build a very simple first web page. You know, for me, the beauty, that's a big difference to Yianni's presentation, is I'm pre-sales usually showing it in a simple way, not becoming too complex, whereas Yianni has to make really the fully brushed, shiny dashboards that are sent around with company communications. So yeah, well, first let's log in. Take it on the same screen. I have my cloud tenant here, and under administration, or if you go /console, you have to be tenant admin to create this web integration link here. And then you can whitelist, you create a new one. If it's the first one, I already created it for the purpose of this. It gives you a unique ID back, and you can edit and add several whitelist origins at once. So we will see this throughout this demo. I'll need more than just localhost, but this is one I need right now. It's in here. So the next step is to upload an app. I'm going back to the new hub. And this is the thing I like about it, is that you do not need to go to a admin page to upload an app. We just do this straight from here and take any, what's new app or something. That was new from April 2020. As we speak, probably they're preparing the launch of June. So if this was next week, I could already show the June. And so you note down the app ID. It's over here. Then we choose a chart to integrate, and I would go for bar charts like this one. If I want to know the ID, different ways to do so. For example, if you click here on embed, it tells you the object ID, as you probably know anyways. So these things I need to note down, the ID from before of the web integration link that sends app here, and the object ID. So I'm set to go. And now for you who are using Mac, this is a DOS prompt. You know, it's also command line interface in Windows, and it does stuff somehow different. But Node.js, at least, which I'm going to use now, is doing the same stuff as a shell prompt. And let's just have a look into this. I'm using a very simple web server here, nothing sophisticated. And as usual, it's coming on the other screen. There we go. So that web server is a node with Express. It's really, really simple. No HTTPS, just listening and exposing one folder here, exposing this on localhost port 65656, the one that I whitelisted just before. And everything I have here under public will be exposed, and I can access it on HTTP as of now. So let's launch this. It's called node and app.js. So somehow the website is now started. And here are the essential parts that I wanted to point out. Again, this is really the very, very simple version of a web map. So the only part in HTML, I have not even separated it. I haven't done it in a very lean way. So just 31 just from first to line 36. That's all it takes. So we first need a style sheet to get the Qlik styles, and we need the required JS from Qlik. So this one does not take a login. The require is available for you. It will load even if you're not logged in, but the rest then will need you to log in first. And then comes the part where I'm going to render it. It's 2 div tags. I would like to have the current selections and the object ID. And later, it's pretty straightforward. This is the new key that has been introduced. The config you will see with many other examples also on the qdt-components. It's always the same config that has a host, a prefix, a port, and something. I've tried with the slash and it has worked. So maybe it works without, but I guess that's what I copy pasted. And here's the web integration ID. And then we will tell require to get all of the resources that Qlik needs when we make this call, JS Qlik, from this relative path. So it goes to Qlik Cloud resources, just like the assets here on top. There is a lot that will come through. I don't know how many megabytes it's loading, but this is time consuming, and also the browser needs to start all this. And then we open the app, and now we can get the real app ID from here. Probably. And the current selections. The object ID, I guess it's the same because, yeah, it's the same object ID as before. And this will use the capability API, the call .app_get_object, to both return the current selections object into the div tag here on the top, and where it says Qlik object, it will show the visualization with the ID, KM, and so on. So simple, straightforward. Let's try this. And we go to localhost 5656 and embed HTML. And it has worked. Very easy. There is a new thing that we're working on, and that is making selections with power of thoughts. So if I think international, it will just make the selection here. No, it doesn't. And I'm in the wrong app. I think I forgot to save this. And I had imported it before. But anyways, you get the point. But now the idea with selecting hasn't worked. Oh, now it does. So if I think of international, it just makes a selection. If I think of domestic, it already makes a selection. That is false transmission. Of course not, but just to illustrate that embedding or to have common selections across multiple sessions is also working in Qlik Cloud, of course. So, and I think this is very powerful because it keeps you, you have the possibility to use here the normal application and do stuff with it. And you can use, of course, the mashup in parallel. And selections are getting synchronized unless you unlink it by creating a separate identity in your session. So by default, the selections are synchronized. So that's, I think, the simplest possible example because, yeah, it's less than 40 lines of code where you can get the idea. And now let's take it a little a step further and study this OSS links. OSS Qlik. Yeah, here's the read up. If, by the way, if you want to really start from my boilerplate, there is a link in the handout which gives you this very simple script. Let's have a look and study a bit more the integration examples. They have been up there for about, I think they started 1 year back and are also updated and maintained. And there are two simple boilerplates to start from. One being a visual mashup. And if you just quickly want to test it and show and have check them out, it's also hosted on a serverless platform called Netlify. So if I want to see what is behind there, I just click this. But you need, yeah, to replace the tenant here on top. So I better should use my prepared link here. In this example, everything is passed through the URL, the tenant, as well as the web integration ID. Here we've got the same again, and this is why I had whitelisted also this host name, web integration examples.netlify, because otherwise I would get rejected. But if if I have a session already and I provide the app that stands behind those visualizations, they instantly show. And as a matter of fact, it also, or to demonstrate, it also uses an API call to get a list of apps. So if you have a look what's going on back there, you see that it's also calling what's going on here. I have a filter on, that's why. And replace and show again. So you see that a couple of things are being called, and it's also calling the API to get a list of the app objects before rendering the other two objects. So to get this project running on your own and to give this as to take this as a starting point, let me first show you also the other example, which is about which is non-visual. It's about integrating with the backend. The app reloader, it's called. So this definitely needs some more brushing. It's just a very simplistic table object here, which gives you all the apps that you have access to on your tenant. And here you have a possibility to start a reload. So this is not using the Qlik.js. It's talking to the APIs. So if I want to reload, for example, this test here, you can see that there is a post call released to the responsible backend call, and that's the reload API. In this case, it passes on the payload, and that is the app ID. And if you refresh, I probably see success or something that this has last been reloaded just a few seconds ago. So that's another example of where you're using an integration to automate stuff rather than to do something visually beautiful. And this is as essential, I would say, for embedding, especially in OEM scenarios where you have to automate things. And this can, of course, also be done with that integration. So let's fork this project or download it. And I've done this here on my computer under, what was it called? Embed visualizations. And if you clone that Git OSS project, what you will get, and you need Node.js, by the way, so you need to have npm. Then you have, again, a couple of files. You do npm install for the beginning, so it fills the node modules. And then when you want to start this project, I'll do npm start here, as well as to open it in the code editor. So this compiles the code into one, or it builds the code and gets all those different libraries from node modules into one big JS file. That's why it takes a few seconds. And now we can visit this website, and we have the same source code as shown before on this Netlify. And I am also already connected to my web tenant. Oh, that went a bit fast. And the reason I am is because I was already editing this. And let me open this also in Visual Studio Code. Wait a sec, too many screens again. So this is a starting point for your web project, and I don't think that despite of this web integration API, there is really a lot of difference to previous projects if you've worked with Qlik Sense on Windows. So here is the index, and this is, of course, this is rendered in a, or this is better for structure than the code that I showed. It's a starting point. I would call it, it's a preferred boilerplate to start. So what this does in the back is it has this packager called Babel polyfill, and it's going to render this for your convenience before exposing this many JavaScript files. It just makes one big one out of it. But here's the essential, and it does two different things. It takes one visualization that existed already in an app under that ID, and renders this in the second div tag on the screen, and the other one is a visualization created on the fly. So this is, both are methods of the capability API. So if you see any analogy to what Yianni has shown before, that is a different way, because here you are talking of making a definition, and the API that gives you back the visualization is bundled into Qlik.js. So it's part of that heavy root API, and then you get back the actually two columns hypercube. This has one definition for the hyper. No, it has actually mistaken mistake of mine. It's just one. It's just account case ID by continent. Actually, somewhere it's using a library ID. That's why. So this is using a master dimension, and this is created directly on the fly. And it also gets the current selections. So if for some reason, and this is what I'm currently also working on to find an answer for this, if this session is stopped or you have not logged in before, actually the website or none of the websites will actually work, because it will just tell you to log in first, and you get back an error message here. So there is currently no official way to have a single sign-on passed through, so that you do not need to log in parallel. I see that there's I see possibility for this, because I've created a single sign-on OpenID Connect container that acts as an IDP for Qlik Cloud, and you would first contact this just as you would do with Qlik Sense on Windows and ask for a ticket, and then visit your website and pass on a certain key in the URL. That way you could bypass the login. But that's something that you have to just keep in mind, that impersonation currently there is no official answer yet for this. So I have to first get into my cloud tenant, have the session cookie available. So after that login only, then the website will start to render, and I can work with the API. So now coming back, it's there. And you see the delay already, so that's although the app is already open on the server, it still takes a few seconds, and that is just the time alone that the big Qlik.js needs to to run in the browser. So this is even depending on your machine. It's a client side, and that's what really the essential difference is to the Qdt components, and also to Nebula. Some of you know that already, which would just hold or get the chart that you want, or the visualization, and not the entire Qlik.js. So are there any questions to this point? I'm just opening the chat right now. Not yet.
No questions. I will actually ask one, and this can actually be to you, Christof, or to Yianni. The thing is, let's say we need to create a mashup to integrate with the using the Qdt components, or going directly to the cloud or to the Qlik Enterprise. But the thing is, we have lots of possibilities in terms of technology, web technologies like the React, the Angular, and stuff like that. Which ones do you guys actually think, in your opinion, that are better suited to actually to integrate with Qlik when you are trying to build a mashup?
You want to reply? Well, based on my experience, and I worked with, I was a fan of Angular for many years, then moved to React. And a lot of people ask me the same question. It depends on your experience and what you want to do. So if you have a lot of Angular experience, it's definitely better to move with Angular. If you have React, better move with React. If you're new and you want to start with something, it depends on what you want to do. Like all of our big mashups, like I had the CIO dashboard, the Salesforce dashboard that I've done a few years ago, I did them in Angular because Angular has a better handling of services and big projects in general. But React is it's better in other aspects, I think. So depends on what you want to do. I'm lately all of our projects, like 99% are all React in the demo team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I do not have real life experience with making production grade web applications with both of them. So I can't really compare the two.
Yeah, I would imagine in this case, I also agree with Yianni. I also, it's like everything, right? It will always depend of each one experience, what kind of problems they face in a project or something like that. But it's also to try to understand and to try in terms of that is actually, this is actually the power of party in terms of the Qlik, that we can easily use any web technology without having actually a major problem, of course.
Yes, what Christof showed is the basis of making a mashup. So qdt-components is not different from what Christof has shown. It's the same idea. It just takes the way from building that from the user. But we, behind the scenes, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're doing the required JS, we're loading the CSS, we're injecting the DOM with CSS and JavaScript. So this stuff has to be done if you want to use the capability API. So yeah, same idea.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, well, what I would like to point the attention to is also that new qlik.dev portal, which will be marketed a lot at Qlik Worlds online in just 2 weeks. This is the new place to be for developers, and already now there is a nice tutorial of. Yiannis, I think the question is here to compare with Nebula, and I don't want to, stand between QDT and Nebula, or position myself in favor of one or the other, but there are definitely some things that they have both in common and things that they don't have in common. And I guess qdt-components was really the only option at all to isolate code if you don't want to go with the capability API and not start from the very ground. And Nebula.js now is now building the bridge between Qlik's native visualizations and the and the application behind and your web application. So if you look at this tutorial or to follow this, it has it's also nicely structured. So you would get Nebula, and it's using npx. Then you get actually a nice structured source folder, so you can decide to use Nebula either to create a mashup or an extension. And I personally see, with the help of Nebula, and actually also with the work that Yiannis has done, qdt-components as well, to be mashups much more reachable to many more developers than if you had to do all this yourself. So I see custom applications to be maybe the first choice in the future. So you have Qlik Sense more as a teaser of what is possible, or to design an app if you're really in the self-service mode. But to make a beautiful web app, let's face it, you have to build a mashup and style it exactly the way you want and add all the stuff you wanted on from a web page. So this gives you a very nice starting point structure. And the big new thing is not that you can just take objects and render them. That's also possible, but you can actually get exactly the same code that Qlik has on its own charts sooner or later into your Mashup project. So it's not a Picasso that looks like our bar chart, it is our bar chart. So I mean, it depends on where you're used to and come from. If you look at Qlik and say, I better do my own bar chart, okay, then walk away from this option. But in many cases, I'm rather coming from the other way around. There is a certain, people are used to how it looks, how they behave. So the cool part here is that you will be able in the future to have the charts available, and you can even go find the code for it and fork it and say, okay, I want some specific aspect of it to be changed. But here's the charts that you one by one add to your code. So import pie chart, for example, gives you a type pie chart available, and then after that you can resolve that promise against the pie chart with really the native behavior and touch and look and feel of Qlik Sense's version. I think that is really an extra benefit here for Nebula.
Also, I would like to add that this and Picasso, they're all in React.js. So since we're talking about frameworks, they're both in React. So if somebody likes React, that will be easier for them to manipulate fork the project and change it to their needs. And also, what R&D is preparing on launching, hopefully this year, is the new theme, which is going to be based on React too. And everything will be bundled together. So if you're thinking about frameworks, React.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, here's, by the way, just that I picked one example, which was the first one to be open sourced, and more will follow. That is like the Meko chart, which I personally haven't used in my life before, but it's one of the more complex charts, visually also more complex. And this is the first to be really, you can really get down to the source code to see, okay, what exactly is it doing? What is it rendering? What is it using and stuff? So that's now something you can even fork and change. And I guess this can bring a lot of new movement into the Qlik community.
This is actually the code of the chart that we have in our Qlik Sense native.
Yes, that's what I was told. It's using Picasso, but Picasso is, and that's also the good thing with Nebula, it's no longer a standalone thing that you have to learn. It's the vehicle to create charts from an attribute, from a JSON, and you can take the same settings if you're not into that detail. If you're not like Miralem, know every key by heart, where it is and where it needs to go. But you could if you like to. So that is really the big power I was missing for many years. That is, okay, can't we move that bars a little bit closer, or I don't know, give it a dashed line rather than a so the Qlik Sense client, all those styling options that it has been that have been introduced, they're just tweaking one or two options of the Picasso definition behind it. But there are 100 more that you could do, but not the way it's exposed in the Qlik Sense client. And I think that's why I see with Nebula much more focus, or I hope there is much more focus in the future on building mashups and not so much resistance and sticking always to the standard and say, well, what's all in the box? What could we do if we go off the normal?
I think that was the entire idea of building Nebula, yes.
Okay. Guys, is there anyone that has any questions to Yianni and Christof? No? Okay.
If you want to reach out to me, you'll find me. I guess I know a couple of you guys. You probably know my contributions as well. So thanks for having me here. And I feel like I'm one of the least experienced people here in the call because I haven't done this in, for real life. I've only done it to sell Qlik. And that usually takes some simpler examples at the beginning. But you're I consider your community to be the real coders behind it. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here and for being willing to actually to share all that stuff with us at the end. Okay, guys, if there is no other questions, very much for all being here. Christof and Yianni, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And yeah, let's keep in touch. And I hope to have you guys again very soon to present something different. And perhaps after Qlik World, some news that might come, if you guys want to share. No?
I'm not allowed to.
Okay, we'll wait 2 weeks in that case. Okay, cool, guys. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.